Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of The Game Plan. This is all about the Denver Broncos versus the Buffalo Bills. The people have watched my earlier kind of high-level rundown of this game. The people have spoken. We must do Denver versus Buffalo, so we'll be breaking this game down. If you're new to The Game Plan in this show, what I do basically, I look at the key injuries for the game. I look at the key statistics for the game. I look at the key analytics at the game. Sometimes I refer to them as the key gamblers or bettors stats. I use all of that to develop a path to success. I also chart plays myself for fantasy football analytics. I put all that together, a path to victory for Denver, a path to victory for Buffalo, and then at the end I use all of that to help project fantasy football. So I will give you my fantasy football projections for this game at the end. Before we get rolling, as I always say, if I could have 2 seconds of your time for 2 clicks, a like and a subscribe. We are so close to becoming a YouTube partner. Once we do that, we have the last of our features unlocked so that we can make these videos cooler and more interactive, which we have big plans to do. Need your help to do that. It's a little bit of effort for you. It goes a huge, long way for us and channels like us, so we appreciate it. Let's start, as I always do, with the key injuries. Do you notice a disparity here? You see the Broncos, like their entire team's on the injury list. Thankfully, they're mostly questionable here. But you have Phillip Lindsay, who I think is key to this game, is questionable. Tim Patrick, Risner, McGovern, Leary, James. Their whole offensive line, it looks like, is there. And then, their nose tackle, not so great. The Bills, they have a tackle, kind of like Ty Nishke. He's been around the league. He's pretty solid, but I don't think he's integral. And then, Jerry Hughes is also questionable. So a lot of questionable, nobody doubtful or anything like that. So I will say Denver comes in more banged up. I would say I would give a little bit of an advantage here because of the offensive line being a little banged up. They're more likely to leave the game a little bit early. I give the advantage to the Bills there, but it's not a huge advantage. Now, if we look at the key statistics, these are in terms of yards accumulated for the season. I look to put position group against their competition. So what you see at the top of the row there is the Denver Broncos passing offense is ranked 25th, and the Bills passing defense is ranked 3rd in the league. That's a little bit of a mismatch. You have the pass defense for the Broncos 5th, the pass offense for the Bills 23rd. A little bit of a mismatch in favor of Denver. And I got to say, just based on those 2 top lines right there, you figure that this game is going to be won in the trenches. So once again, you look at that kind of banged up Denver offensive line, you start to have some questions, but we'll work our way through it. Run offense for Denver 16th versus the 18th ranked run defense, and then the 8th ranked Bills run offense against the 11th ranked Denver defense. Just in terms of yardage accumulation, you look at these 2 teams and you think, wow, that's actually pretty darn even. So let's move it forward to the key analytics, sometimes called the better stats. And the reason these are the better stats is because professional gamblers, although they look at a long list of things, much more intense than this, at a high level, they like to know yards per play. How efficient are you play to play? They like to know about your 3rd and 4th down percentage. How are you in key situations? They want to know how efficient are you in the red zone? How many times do you score versus trying to kick a field goal, turn the ball over, or what have you? And then there's turnover margin. How clean is your offense? And how good is your defense at grabbing the ball? And lastly, penalty yards, which is really a good indication of discipline on the team and how well they're coached, in my opinion. So if we look at these, just side by side, you see the Denver Broncos offense gets 5.2 yards per attempt, basically per play. That's not great if you look at the league average. The Buffalo Bills, for some reason, I think it's like the early 90s, so I'm getting like John Elway and Jim Kelly in my head, and they're at war with each other. The Buffalo Bills defense gives up 4.9 yards per play. That's really good for a defense. So if you look at an average, you're looking at a difference in about 0.3. So you can figure Denver's getting about 5 to 5. 0.05 yards per play or 0.5 yards per play. So, not great for Denver. Then you look offensively for the Bills, 5.4 yards per play. That's only 0.2 of a play, a yard better than the Denver Broncos. You look at the defense for the Broncos, 5.1 yards per given up. Again, you look at the stats from the last slide. You look at these yards per play. Again, these 2 teams are more even than you would think they would be if you look solely at the record. So let's drill in further. 3rd down percentages, okay? We know that these 2 teams have tough defenses. It's going to be tough sledding. We know that this game is probably going to be a ground and pound game. Who's going to win in the trenches? Well, let's look and see situational football. Usually good running teams have a decent 3rd down conversion percentage. So let's go. Let's see, the Denver Broncos, 28.5 third down percentage. That means they punt or go to fourth down basically 72% of the time. Not good at all. The Bills, meanwhile, their defense only gives up third down conversions 34% of the time. That's a really good percentage defensively. So advantage Bills there. Now you look at the Bills offense, 36.5% versus the Broncos third down conversion defense at 34.9%. I mean, I guess you give a little bit of an advantage if you're looking at third down to Buffalo, just the tiniest of a hair there. Then you look at fourth down percentage. Denver's actually really good. They're getting it 3/4 of the time. Buffalo's defense is fine. Then you look at Buffalo not really converting on fourth down. Denver, okay, advantage Denver on fourth down in desperation situations. If Denver's trying to come back, they have some good plays dialed up for fourth down. Okay, let's drill in further. The red zone percentage. Offensively, the Denver Broncos surprisingly have 44% red zone percent. I thought it would be lower, to be honest with you, given where their record is. And the Bills, surprisingly, defensively give up a touchdown 60% of the time. So when you get in the red zone, I think that's a little bit of an advantage to the Denver offense. Interestingly enough, I would not have expected that before drilling into these numbers. Then you look at Buffalo. Here's the thing: Buffalo's scoring 2/3 of the time. Heavy advantage for Buffalo. So even though everybody is kind of equal in the yardage categories, the yards per play, third and fourth down, it's so slight, then Buffalo takes a big lead in my book based on their ability to score touchdowns and not take field goals in the red zone. Then you drill down into the turnover margin, very slim there. Denver's slightly on the negative side. Buffalo's breaking even. With a young quarterback like Josh Allen, for them to be breaking even with turnovers, I actually think that's a very positive thing. Even though you would like to see this as a 1 or maybe even higher, or at least a half in the positive category. Again, with a young quarterback who kind of takes deep field chances, downfield chances, I should say, for Josh Allen. That's a nice number, I think, for Buffalo for where they are today. Obviously, they want to improve that in years going forward. Penalty yardage, you can see, 53.4, 57.9, pretty well coached. What you don't want to see is like a team up in the 60s or 70s, but there's not a lot of advantage one way or another. They're both fairly disciplined. So you put all this stuff into a stew, right? And I mentioned I do chart plays for my fantasy football analysis, and we will get to that, what I call RoccoBot, my daily fantasy and my fantasy football projections. But I do that. I look at the play charts. I try to look at how to attack these different defenses and offenses for that matter. So let's look at the Denver Broncos first, their path to victory. First of all, as I mentioned before, the 25th ranked passing attack, and it's probably even a little worse now that they've moved on to Brandon Allen, although you can certainly make the argument that he's an improvement over Flacco, and I really don't care enough to make that argument, to be honest with you, or argue against it. But against the third ranked passing defense, that's not the way to go. I've been pretty critical of, I believe his name's Scangrello, the offensive coordinator for Denver. I don't think they jump out, the Denver Broncos. I don't think they jump out to a lead enough. The one time they did it, which was last week, then they kind of went a little bit conservative. But oddly enough, I don't think they really went conservative enough, though, because I think they kind of went away from the running game. I know Lindsay was banged up. But either way, they got to get Freeman and Lindsay going in this game, and they have to stick with them. I think the way to, kind of neutralize Buffalo, and we've seen teams do this, even the Redskins who lost the game to them, you can get yards on the ground. Maybe it's more Freeman this week than Lindsay. We'll see how banged up he is. I know he's just questionable. I think he'll play. But, get both of them involved and keep them involved. Okay, Josh Allen, obviously he's a running quarterback, but as I mentioned, he's I guess similar in style in terms of how much am I going to pass, how much I'm going to run to Lamar Jackson. I think he is a little bit more of a pure passer at this point, whereas Lamar Jackson might be a little bit more of a raw passer, although if you look at the completion percentage, they do favor Lamar Jackson at this point. But the point I'm trying to make is, Lamar Jackson I don't think is going to, or I'm sorry, Josh Allen I don't think will beat you to the edge like Lamar Jackson does, and can do in Baltimore. I think you contain Josh Allen. If you can contain him into the pocket and make him beat you, or at least scramble up the middle, I think you're in a lot better position than if you do let him kind of go roll out, bootleg, and all that kind of stuff. So keep him in the pocket, let him beat you throwing the ball, especially with your pass defense as good as it is. Damn Denver. Denver, you can't win this game going toe-to-toe. The way I would see this game, panning out if they were just kind of clashing on a neutral field is Buffalo just getting a little bit more points per quarter every quarter. Maybe the lead is 3 in the first quarter, maybe it's 6 in the second quarter, and so on. I think that there's a little bit of an attrition there because I do give the favor. I love Denver's defense, by the way. I really do. And they're playing better and better and better, and Fangio's putting a nice program together. So I definitely respect this defense. I'm not going to blow that letdown, meltdown against Minnesota last week out of proportion. I like what they're doing. But Buffalo's offense is better than Denver's offense, so I think they're more fit to score. I think that they're going to have to go for more fourth downs in this game. I think that usually what I say is, they have to steal a possession. And yeah, could that be forcing a fumble or getting an interception? Sure. But I also think that stealing a possession is not punting when you should punt. So situationally, at some point, if they're on the right side of the 50-yard line, maybe instead of going for that 50-yard field goal, you just try to keep the chains moving if it's a fourth and short. I'm not a big proponent this week for Denver just to take the points. I know that's probably how they're going to lean because I think that comes from kind of the consistent leadership of their coaching staff, but I do think they have to be a little bit more risky this week and steal one of those possessions or keep a drive going that shouldn't be there. Now, if they force a couple of turnovers in the first quarter, I think that would probably be enough, but they do need to keep things going to give them the advantage. And then lastly, the Broncos, I know they're going to try to get Noah Fant involved in the game. That's the way this offense is going, and I can see the mismatch. Noah Fant's very good. I was high on him coming into the season. I think I was probably about a season too early on him, maybe even just only a half season too early. But, he reminds me, as I've said in a couple of these videos, of maybe a younger Jordan Reed. But unfortunately, he's still a little bit, mentally, I don't want to say mentally weak, but he makes gaffes. He makes mistakes. He'll hold every now and then. I don't think that he should be the focal point this week. I think that the focal point should be Courtland Sutton. I like that matchup more in this game in particular than even the Minnesota game last week where I actually liked Fant involved a little bit more. So I think Sutton is the matchup and maybe Tim Patrick as well if he can play. But I think those are the keys there and obviously take care of the ball. Now, the path to success for Buffalo, I mentioned that I like Buffalo. I think they're a stronger team at this point, and the records indicate that. Although, as we've seen in the analytics, this game I think will be a little bit tougher than people thought it would be. Now, look, the best way, in my opinion, to attack Denver's defense is with the running back. And I thought it was interesting when Denver played Chicago, right? So Fangio was the defensive architect of those really tough Chicago Bears defense, including last year's team. When he played and squared off against Chicago early in the season, how did Denver attack Chicago with the running game and with screen passes to the flats? Wouldn't you know it, the next couple of games, that's how the teams attacked the Denver Broncos, and I think that's still the way they need to attack the Denver Broncos. I think Devin Singletary in the flats, in the screen game, I don't think he's being utilized enough in the screen game for me. I think he's a very, very dynamic player. I don't think that Buffalo has really even begun to tap into his potential at this point, but I like him in the outside, and I like Gore slamming his head in the inside, and I think that will get the running game going. Again, that's why I kind of favor a little bit more the Bills to win this game in the trenches, where I think this game will be decided. John Brown, I think he can have a nice day. I mean, I know how good the Denver passing defense is, but I do think Brown will get his opportunities. But in order to do that, in order to open up the opportunities down the field, they need to make Cole Beasley and maybe Dawson Knox or whoever tight ends or maybe even McKenzie. They need to work these guys in short routes, quick routes early. And the reason I say this is because I know Buffalo likes to throw the ball down the field. It's a great kind of strategy and offense. But when I saw Cole Beasley and when I started to become a believer in this Buffalo team was actually during the preseason, I wanted to see more screen passes and more bubble screens to Cole Beasley. Work the short part of the field. Let Allen get into a rhythm, and the top will open up on the defense. I think that is a key, especially this week because Denver's passing defense, as we already talked about, is very strong. Next on my list, the Bills are stronger in the analytics department, so I have the note there, the quote, don't do anything stupid. Take care of the ball. You don't need to go for a 4th and 5 from your own 45-yard line or anything like that. Basically, everything I said about Denver needing to steal a possession, Buffalo, I think, can just play a conservative game and trust their defense to do its thing and trust their offense to score enough points to win. I really believe that. Ian McKenzie, I think, has also had a chance to have a nice game, but only if Buffalo wants to work that intermediate. I think that's kind of a weakness. Buffalo fans, please, I'm not a fan of either of these teams, so I'm really coming into this without any bias whatsoever. If you disagree with me, please let me know, but I would love to see more 10 to 15 yard completions in this offense. what I'm seeing, from when I've watched the games, and I haven't watched every minute of the game this whole season, but I have watched a lot of Bills this year. It just feels like it's over the top, and then pound the ball with the run game. So it's like pound it and then take your deep shot. I want to see more Josh Allen throwing, 10-yard seam routes, or, maybe like a 15-yard out. He has the arm strength for it. We all know that. And so I'd like to see a little bit more of that. And I think until Josh Allen gets there and can really work that middle part of the field a little bit more, regularly, I don't think that this Bills team will have reached their potential. I don't think that they're going to reach their potential this season. But I do think that they're a really, really good bet to be in the playoffs at this point, especially with the back half of their schedule. Certainly they're in the driver's seat there for a wild card position. So once again, I like the Bills. I think that there's still some potential, especially with Devin Singletary, especially with Josh Allen being a little bit more efficient. But overall, I'm on the Bills to win this week, although I think that Denver could definitely cover the spread given how close everybody is analytically. Let's end this video now with some fantasy football projections. RoccoBot is basically the computer program that I wrote to spit out computer rankings. I don't always agree with these rankings, but I always let you know when I don't. Brandon Allen, I hate his projection this week. I'm sorry, let me say that. I agree with RoccoBot. I don't like him, and I don't like the projection this week for him, so I'm sitting him for sure. Lindsay and Freeman have to be involved. Those are both start values at the running back position. I have Lindsay on my team. Assuming he's healthy enough to go, I will be playing him. Courtland Sutton, I mentioned before, that is actually a start designation. I think that he needs to be a little bit more involved. Hopefully Denver takes some deep shots early. I like Courtland Sutton this week. Noah Fant, actually that's kind of a fringe start, but I'm leaning more towards putting him on the bench, although we do see what Denver is doing to try to get him more involved. And then Denver's defense, as good as it is and as much I respect it, this particular week against Buffalo, I have their defense as a sit with a 5.2. You can find better out there on the waiver wire. Let's see. Josh Allen for the Buffalo Bills. 18 points, that's kind of a fringe start, but based on his ability to run the ball, I think he's a start this week if you have him. Certainly in daily fantasy, I rotate him into some lineups. I don't like Gore as much as I like Devin Singletary, and I think a lot of people would agree with me there, but I think Singletary definitely has a chance to get in the end zone. If they work the flats, if they throw screen passes, I think they'll work against Denver, and I think Devin Singletary is the guy to make that happen. John Brown, I like him. Like I said, I do think he gets in the end zone as well. Ian McKenzie, I think, has a great opportunity to outplay, based on, kind of what I was looking at schematically between these two teams. I think McKenzie could be a nice, bargain player. If you're looking for the bottom of the barrel in daily fantasy budget, I think Isaiah McKenzie could be that type of guy to be like a really nice, like 10 to 15 point daily fantasy sleeper at a very low budget. I wouldn't put him in my fantasy lineup, but I do think he has the potential to certainly outplay this projection. Cole Beasley, I don't like the projection for him this week. Certainly he can outplay it, but I don't think he's a great bet too, so I'm not going to play him in daily fantasy or fantasy. Knox, I don't have him as a start, and then even the Buffalo defense, which I generally like, I don't have it as a start this week. I think, again, you can find better value out there on the waiver wire. So there you go. That takes me through my entire deep dive for Buffalo versus Denver. I appreciate everybody, supporting this channel and watching. Once again, please like and subscribe. I also have deep dives out for a bunch of the games, the Baltimore-LA Rams game, the Oakland-New York Jets game. I'll be releasing more after this as well. So check out our entire Week 12 playlist, which is updated daily. Once again, subscribe to the network. We post a ton of content up here. Eventually, it's not just going to be me. It's going to be more people from the Underdog Podcast Network. I think you'll like what we have planned coming into 2020 as well. So subscribe now. Get in on the ground floor. Thanks again for watching. Appreciate it, and we'll catch you on another episode soon. Thanks.